mentor on Team 125.
And I'm Gabby. I'm a sophomore student in 125.
Okay. So to start off, we want to hear from you guys. What are questions you might have about awards or the judging process? What confuses you? And what's like a team goal that you guys might have? Don't all talk at once. Anybody? How many teams are veteran teams? Like you've competed before? How many teams have won an award before? Awesome. So what brought you to this seminar? What do you want to know more about? Yeah.
Chairman's.
Chairman's. Awesome. We'll definitely get into that. What else?
Actually, I want to know what is there a magic formula for everything you need to have in the award? Not the chairman's, but
Yeah, but just awards in general. Like, what do you need in order to qualify for one or win one?
Yeah.
Good. Anybody else? No? All right, so these are all really great awards. We're going to get really in-depth into each of the awards that we are all eligible for, and some of them only rookie teams are eligible for, but we're going to get down and dirty into the details of each award. So what can awards do for your team? It's not just about, taking home a trophy. Within our district, it's about earning points to move on to our New England District Championship. But beyond that, it can really start to kind of create a name for your team within the FRC community, within your own community. It's a great way to show your sponsors that you're doing a really good job, you're using their money well, and it's something for them to showcase on their side of the fence. It's a great way to engage other teams. So working with teams in your area, and like I said before, it can help you kind of qualify for the next step. So district champs and then the championship level. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
I know that last time when we were doing our essay, we sent out our essay to another team to help out with editing, and I know that helped us out a lot with organization and everything.
Right, so networking with other teams to prepare for some of your award submissions is really good. So within your own community, it generates awareness and can get more people interested in joining your team. School systems, when I was in high school, my robotics team, even though our football team was probably one of the worst teams in our state, they were more invested in our football team, even though our robotics team was taking home a World Championship Chairman's Award. We were, winning almost every single event we were going to. But once we started showcasing those awards to our principal and our school district, they became more interested and realized that the people on our team were working really hard and it was getting us somewhere. Our school and our team was really well known in the robotics community, but not really within our own school or within our own town. So we started using that as leverage to get more interest in stuff. And by the end of my senior year, we had people kind of waiting for us outside of our high school, and we were coming back from events with like signs and stuff. So it was pretty cool. It engages potential sponsors. So sponsors really like to showcase where their money is going. So if you're a team that, you win an award for something like programming or for community outreach, that's a great way to show, like a company to show where their money is going and how it's impacting youth and trying to, grab those youth and bring them up into their company later on. And it gives you the potential to expand into the FRC community. So when you win an award, it kind of generates more excitement amongst your team, keeps people motivated, and it could motivate your team to start like an FLL team, an FTC team, and taking the skills that you've developed to win that award, whether it's like a programming award, technical, or even a non-technical, you can take those skills, translate it into a presentation like this, and share it with others. So.
I know that like last year when I was doing chairmans and all that stuff, it really was like a confidence booster for me, winning especially in Revere District, because it's like I worked so hard at something and it's like an accomplishment, and it helps out with the future of being able to talk to everybody and not getting so nervous.
Okay, so definitely personal skills too. I'm surprised I didn't put that in there. So what can awards do for your team? So in our district, I'm going to say this probably a million times, it's really important to focus on winning awards because it's going to help generate extra points beyond your qualification match points. So when you want to earn or work towards winning an award, you really need to get yourself organized as a team, both on the mechanical and the non-technical side. Both the technical and non-technical teams are going to want to work together to translate what's going on with the robot into maybe a comprehensive document that somebody who might not know anything about robotics could read and get a good understanding of. As a team, it's really good to set goals, and not just like a single season goal, but maybe say in 5 years from now, we want to win, the Chairman's Award or a really high level award. So like Gabby was saying, it creates self-awareness. So it's going to develop really good communication skills within your team, whether it's with mentors or students. It gets you to think about what's your team's purpose. Is it really to get kids to learn how to create, build, program a really high level robot? Or is it more than that? Do you want to reach out to your community and provide opportunities for everybody in your community rather than just the people on your team? Do you want to talk about the last 2 points?
Oh yeah, especially on our team, it like creates a union, especially with different races and people come from different countries, and it just like really makes everyone just come all together and just celebrate like FRC, STEM, and all that. It inspires confidence in students as well as the whole team, since students who like are usually an outcast at their school or like not have many friends, they have a community to be with and actually have like, especially since teams are together almost a lot during build season, like almost every single day. It builds like a family type of environment for them to grow in, since like maybe they don't have many friends at school, especially our team, since we're from a lot of high schools.
Right. And this last point is a pretty interesting one. It's something that I've noticed on a few teams that I've been on. So inspires confidence in students and team as a whole. So for example, last year we won the Chairman's Award, and at that point it was really like a subset of the team was working on a lot of community outreach, where the other subset was working on a lot of technical things. Since last year, the two sides have kind of really meshed together, and we're trying to figure out ways to incorporate both sides. The people that weren't necessarily working on community outreach benefited from our non-technical people winning, like getting us to the point of winning chairmans, because it got our entire team to like world championships and stuff. So it got the technical people to kind of, get on board and get excited. Obviously, team pride, when you win an award, it's proof that you've been working really hard on something. It's showing that you're able to not only like do something really great, but you're able to communicate it to, a small group of people like the judges, and get them to understand and recognize the impact of it. All right. So like I said, it's evidence of hard work paying off. This is what I like to talk about when I talk about winning awards. It's not necessarily about taking home a trophy. It's getting people to understand the hard work that you're putting in and getting somebody else to appreciate it. All right, so the judges, they are the people at the competitions that walk around in blue polo. So if you're new here, at every event, there's a panel of judges. I'm gonna go through how the judges are broken up so you can get a better understanding of the people that are gonna be stopping by your pit area to ask you a list of questions. So judges are volunteers. They could be somebody from a company that's sponsoring the event. For example, in New England, we have a lot of United Technologies volunteers because UTC is a huge sponsor of New England First. It could be a representative from the community that the event's being hosted in. Some of them know what FIRST is. Some of them have no idea what FIRST is. Each judge will get a lot of information about what the game is, what FIRST is. If they're a judge that's going to be reviewing an award submission, they're going to get that well in advance, so they'll be able to read through that and get a good understanding of the teams that they're going to be judging. They're all professionals, so some of them may have really solid technical experience, say in like programming. Some of them are teachers. It's a huge variety, and it's a great thing that there's such a variety because they all bring a different viewpoint to the table. So these are how the judges are broken up. At every event, there's a judge advisor. They do not make any of the decisions at the event. They recruit the judges for the events, and they kind of oversee them and herd the kittens, as they say. They make sure that they're on task. They make sure that they're having really good conversations that are kind of navigating in the correct way. These are how our actual judges are broken down. So there are technical awards. Those are all robot-based. So these are judges that will go around in pairs and talk to you specifically about your robot. Usually they lead with the question, tell me about your robot. Their sidekicks are the match observers. These are judges that sit right at the scoring table next to the field with a clipboard or a laptop the entire event. And they take notes on all the teams. That way, if you're talking to a technical judge and you say, my robot can shoot 1,000 balls in one match, those judges are going to turn to the match observers and say, oh, team so-and-so said that they can shoot 1,000 balls. Is that correct? So they kind of fact check the things that the technical judges are hearing in the pit with the match observers. So team attribute awards, judges. Those are the people that are going to come around and ask about your business plan. That's a submitted award. So if you did submit a business plan, they will have seen it and they'll have a copy back in the judges room. They're going to ask you about your team outreach and just about your team in general. What's your team makeup like? What's your story? You know, how did you get here? How long have you been here? The Chairman's Award judges. So the Chairman's Award we'll get into later, but there are usually 2 or 3 judges in a room. The students will go in for 7 minutes to interview and then about 5 minutes of questioning. So they are only looking at the Chairman's Award. They see your submission about 2 weeks in advance and they read through it. They usually take notes, very well prepared. And the same thing for the Dean's List judges. So we'll talk more about the Dean's List Award, but that is the essay that the mentors write about 2 students on your team. And then you choose which event that they get interviewed at. And the Dean's List judges will have read the interview, or read the award submission before that, and they will ask specific questions for that student in their interview. So you will find these people in the pits, you will find them in specific judging rooms, and they come on day 1. So when you're loading in at night on day 0 at your event, the judges aren't there yet. But first thing in the morning, the next day when the competition starts, they will be there and they will be roaming around. You will see them everywhere. Any questions about the makeup of the judging panel? I know that was like a kind of a confusing part for me for a while, and getting a better understanding of where they are, how they're broken up, and what information they bring to the judging table is good. Yeah.
So are any of the judges for like Spirit Award, are they looking in the stands too, or just in the stands?
So it's a combination of both. So when we look at the breakdown of the awards, you will see that the Spirit Award may not be the loudest team there, but that will factor in. Like your overall demeanor at the competition is also going to kind of impact how they view your interview in the pit, about how, like, they ask about how your team is involving yourself in your community and getting the spirit of FIRST in your community. All right, so we're going to go over the submission-based awards. There are a few of them. When we go through the breakdown of each of the awards, both submission-based, non-technical, and technical, we're going to be looking at key phrases. These are words that are within the award description that's on the FIRST website that people kind of glaze over sometimes and don't notice, but they're the words that the judges are using in order to determine who is the most eligible for this award. How many people have submitted for a submission-based award before? Yeah, so awesome. So which awards have you submitted for in the past? We'll start over here.
Dean's List, Chairman's Award. I think we pushed the safety video out.
Awesome.
Is it?
Yep.
Woody Flowers, Dean List, and the Entrepreneurship Award.
Right. And are you like consistent in doing that each year? Or is it something you've done before and then kind of?
It's something that we have been starting to do in the last couple of years, since I joined the team, and then we're continually doing it. We're building.
Awesome. And I saw some hands back here. Yeah.
I was for some years, it was the entrepreneurship last year.
Awesome. Entrepreneurship is a very lengthy, hard thing to submit for, so nice job. So the Woody Flowers Award is a submission that the students get to pick one mentor and then write about them. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I know last year she was actually nominated for the award, and it was like a huge surprise. But cute students work on it in the background, not necessarily you guys have to do this, but usually our team like works on the essay behind the mentor's back and then surprises them with it, and it's like this whole emotional thing. And it's essay just demonstrating about how the mentor really shows the attributes to the team, how they help and how they help students, and how they get like STEM outreach in general.
So this is the official award description for the Woody Flowers Award. The words highlighted in red are what you really need to focus on when you as the students are trying to come up with information to put in your essay about your mentor. So it's interesting. This last one is really the big key. So communication skills. How do they improve your team and your community with their communication skills? It's not just who is the smartest, most awesome mentor. That can factor into it, but you really want to focus on these different things. These are what the judges are looking for. So the judges for the Woody Flowers Award panel are past Woody Flowers Award winners. The way that the Woody Flowers Award works in our district is all 200 teams, or more than 200 teams at this point, that submit. They get put into a pool, and the essays get divvied up amongst the Woody Flowers Award past winners. They review it, and then they narrow it down little by little, and there is one Woody Flowers Award winner in our entire district out of the 200 some odd teams. So it is a really difficult thing to win for that person. However, it is such a great way to say thank you and to really honor them and respect them. Like, I was very surprised when I was nominated. But it's a really great way to get students to kind of work together and put together like a nice essay about somebody on their team. I know at different off-season events in New England, they're trying to create like a mini Woody Flowers where you can submit that award and we recognize more mentors that way. The more recognition, the better, in my opinion. The Dean's List Award is for the mentors who nominate 2 students on their team. They're really looking for how the student not only impacts their team, but impacts their community with the skills that they're learning from their team and kind of spreading it out into the community. So you get to write an essay about that student. It is submitted online, and then you choose which event you want to have them interview at. It is really nice to surprise the students with it. However, it is even nicer to make sure they read their submission and then talk to them about, you know, hello, we've submitted you for this award and now you need to do an interview. You don't want to be like, hey, we're at this event. In 10 minutes, you're going to go interview with some judges. So make sure that you communicate with the students. Typically what we do on our team is we choose the students usually in the fall. We start to gather information about them. You're going to need to get their GPA. So if they're a student at your school, you need to make sure that you're able to get that information. And we'll tell them midway through build season, like, hey, surprise, you're the chosen one. But now we need to have you review your submission, make sure it, you know, it has everything that you would want us to highlight, and then we send it off. And then we typically try to work with them on interview questions.
If you're submitted, do all submissions go to an interview?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Every student is interviewed, and it's nice because the judges will have read the student submission, and they always create questions that are specific to the student and their submission in their life. So it's really important that the students get to review their essay before they go into the judging room. Because if there's some like tiny thing that you as a mentor think is like absolutely amazing, but it's not on their radar and it gets brought up, then it can kind of throw them off. So at each event, the students are interviewed, and then the judges will choose 2 students from each district event to go on to the district championship. So even if your team doesn't qualify for district championship, your student can either be there in person to interview, or we've done Skype interviews and Skype calls, and then the winners are chosen. Last year at district championships, they actually did phone call interviews with all of the students beforehand, regardless if they were going to be at district champs or not. So it may change this year, it may stay that way. But and then those winners get on to the world championship. We actually had a student in 2015. Yeah. 2015 won a world championship Dean's List award. This is also a great letter of recommendation for a student to use for their college applications or job application. So I really think this award's great. The students should be recognized more. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think that's
Okay. The Entrepreneurship Award. So this is a business plan model. Oh, yes.
Can a senior be nominated for the Dean's List?
No, it needs to be a sophomore or a junior. Steve, is that still correct? Sophomore and junior, okay. Because it was basically open-ended for a while, and then they narrowed it down to sophomore and junior. Yep. So Entrepreneurship Award is a business plan on how your team functions and models itself. Keywords here: skill, manage, and achieve team objectives. So there are templates within the award submission page in the STIMS thing. I'm going to call it a thing because it's a little tricky to navigate. So it gives a nice outline of it. This is something you can start working on in the fall. The submission for this opens in November, and it's really good to go in and look and see what information you need to put in. There are also great examples online that I will have at the end of this presentation, but it is a very lengthy process. It really involves communicating with team leadership, talking about finances, team sustainability, people-wise, so mentors and students. And so it's really good for students to communicate with their mentors on this. It's really important to have a mentor that is overseeing this because it is a lot for a student to take on their own.
Yeah, and they also have like team objectives as in like things you are planning to do in the future, things you've done, and it also strengthens your entrepreneurship award. If you said like last year you said you were going to do something and you actually did it.
Right. Any questions before we move on? Yep. Okay. All right, so here are some tips and tricks on how to use your preseason, like right now, and your postseason to get ready for submission-based awards. These are the most labor-intensive awards. It is often hard to get students to really commit to doing them because it's basically like doing more homework, but it really pays off in the long run. So reflect and review. If you're a new team, obviously this isn't the most effective way to do things, but if you're a veteran team like most of you are, this is a really great thing to do now. So sit down with your entire team or just your award submission team and figure out what went well, what didn't work. From there, you'll want to talk about, what information in our submissions is completely obsolete at this point. What's really old? What should we get rid of? And what should we add? Getting rid of old information is really important because, as most of you know, all of these submissions have a character limit, which can be the death of you. And beyond that, based on what went really well, what new goals are you going to set for this year? How are you going to supersize what you did last year, or how are you going to tweak it and make it better?
And if you are a rookie team, I would probably suggest getting in touch with one of your closest veteran teams to see if they can help you out with chairmans and help you with the process, because I know it might be tricky.
Or any of the awards, really. Yeah. So organizing documents, do you want to talk about that since we've been doing that lately?
Organizing documents. I would suggest that you don't make a bunch of documents everywhere, because I remember last year it would be a pain to go and look, oh, where do we have the data from the team, how many boys and girls are in, or where do we have what we did last year and what we want to do this year. And it was I suggest just doing it in one file, since then it would be easier to access.
Right, and asking for letters of support. So a letter of support could be something as simple as a quote from another team that you may have worked with or helped out, saying hey, remember that time last year when we came into your pit and helped you fix your robot? Can you just write a quick blurb about that? That way you can stick that in one of your award submissions or your grant application later on. When you're asking for any sort of letter of support, it's really important to ask for something specific. Not, hey, can you just write something about how you maybe thought we helped you? Be really specific in what you want from them, and it may seem awkward, but it usually works out fine. And like Gabby was saying before, collecting data is really important, and this is a great time of year to do it. Even for rookie teams, figure out what your gender breakdown is, how many students you have, what types of extracurricular activities they do that aren't necessarily robotics, so you can get a good feel for your demographics. Another thing that you can look up is your graduation rate of your high school. That's all public information online, and you can kind of compare it to your graduation rate of your own team. That's a really good statistic to have. What other types of data points do we look at?
Race, if you were born in the United States, if you speak a second language, just stuff especially for the minority group, to try to get them involved, especially women and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm. And another thing, so think about things that would set your team apart. For us, it's our diversity in our makeup, because we have students from about 5 different high schools in the Boston area, and they're very culturally diverse. So we try to get information on that specific data point. Other data points that you can get, so if you were to host a workshop like we are today, you would want to get data on how many people came, how many teams came. You can get even deeper than that, which is something we've been trying to do. How many of those teams went on the next season to win an award? How many teams went on the next season to make it to eliminations? So you can kind of correlate the information of what you're doing now into something in the future. So really figuring out how to quantify the things that you're doing. For example, if you do a demonstration at I don't know, somewhere in your community, you want to get a good number of how many people were exposed to your robot, how many people in general, if they were there, they were exposed to your robot, your team, FIRST, and STEM. So there's 4 different data points with one thing.
Presentations and stuff would also benefit with sponsors, during Hub Week.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah. And then creating an outline for next year's submission. So that's something that we're working on right now. Based on how last year went, or based on the things that we know we do, how can we structure information in a way that's going to tell our story as a team? Because that's really important when it comes to submission-based awards. Whether it's a student, a mentor, or your team, you want to figure out a way to take data points and just plain information and figure out how to make it more personal. Judges are going to be reading a lot of stuff. For chairmen, they're going to be reading at least 10 submissions for each event. So you want to make sure that your story is a memorable one. And you want to do that in a way that's not only integrating data points, but integrating your own personal journey through everything that you're doing. Especially with Dean's List and Chairman's Award too, because they're going to be reading a lot. think about it. There's 200 teams. If every team in New England were to submit their 2 Dean's List students, which I hope they do, that's a lot of essays that the judges are going to be reading through. Or if everybody in New England, or every eligible team in New England was able to submit for chairmans, that's over 100 teams. So make sure that you're able to collect data and translate it in a way that's going to be directly related back to you. And memorable. All right, so during the build season, the most busy time of year when we get the least amount of sleep and the least amount of daylight, unfortunately. So here's a breakdown of the things that you might want to do during build season in order to tackle these different submissions. So first thing, look at the award deadlines. They're out right now. They're actually penciled into my calendar because I'm going to structure the rest of my personal life around it at this point. So after you see the actual award deadlines, make your own. So on our team, we say, okay, by kickoff, we want an outline of what we want in this year's submission done. By midway through build season, we want our essay draft done so we can send it off to 5 or 6 other people to review. So make your own deadlines that will work best for your team. Think about different benchmarks that you want to hit in order to make sure that you're not scrambling to do it at the last minute.
Yeah, we can't stress enough how important that is, because I know it might be difficult to stay in time, but it will really benefit you, especially in the craziness of build season. If you just leave it till last minute, it won't end up turning right. And reviewing it, sending it out to people also a benefit, because if you're particularly looking at an essay for too long, you will literally miss out like 3 dots in one sentence.
Yep.
Because you've looked at it too much.
So that's a really good point that Gabby's bringing up. So especially as a mentor, we have myself and 1 or 2 other mentors that work with our award submission teams. Last year, once the ball got rolling, I stopped looking at the submission because I knew if I kept looking at it, even with small changes or big changes, I'd be hearing it in my head the way that it was at the beginning or the way that I had been reading it. So if you have the ability for, you as a mentor or maybe one student to kind of go off and not track edits and changes, it's really beneficial later on to be able to go and read the changes and actually be able to see them. On top of that, if you have another team that you're friendly with, or there's plenty of teams that offer it, exchange award submissions. Find somebody outside of our district that is willing to trade award submissions with you and review it. We did it with Infinite Loop in Maine last year because we knew our teams weren't really going to cross paths. Even if we did, whatever. But it was really good for our students to see a totally different viewpoint of how to tackle the Chairman's Award. Their outreach and their submission was really different than ours, but the way that they structured the essay itself was really different and gave them a lot of insight on how we could reword things, rephrase things. I also think it gives a good viewpoint gives you an idea of who you are as a team as compared to somebody else. Yeah.
Is there any where you can see or read Chairman's Award submissions from other teams?
Yep,
Yes.
definitely. I actually have a link at the end of this where it's all listed. So every winner from last year and previous years is on the FRC website, along with, so it's their actual submission, their Chairman's Award video, and sometimes if the team put up a practice presentation, they posted that YouTube link as well. It's hidden in the FRC website, but I have the link down here, and this is on our team website. So during the build season, if you're starting from scratch, it can be really, really, really overwhelming. The first thing you want to think about is, what is your team's mission statement? What's your overall goal as a team? So after that, you want to kind of look at these different categories: team history, community outreach, first objectives, and kind of like your team impact within your own team. So how is your team affecting your mentors, your students' graduation rates, and all that stuff? The Chairman's Award submission in STEMs actually gives a nice breakdown. So there's, I think I have it later in this, but there's the executive summary. They're basically short answer questions about the different areas that the judges want to know about. After that, it is the 10,000 character essay where you get to just say whatever you want. It could involve everything that you've talked about in your executive summary, or it could be something else.
On the executive summary, the characters have to be under 500.
Yeah, it's
right?
500 or less. So determining high-level data points in each submission for supporting documents. So we talked about data and statistics. So for entrepreneurship, you want to look at, your first objectives. You want to look at your team objectives and add, solid numbers to those. How is your team growing? How is it? How many people is it impacting? That type of stuff. For Woody Flowers Award, it may not be as number-driven, but it will be kind of personal story-driven. So, how many inspirational things has this Woody Flowers Award nominee done. For Dean's List, it's really about the student and what they do and how they're impacting their team and their community. Start organizing photos, key phrases, quotes. We have documents that are just like random quotes, random photos. We have a slide presentation of different YouTube videos that we think have really cool themes that could maybe generate ideas for our Chairman's Award later on. So anything that you see, like make a Pinterest board, make a Google Doc or a slide presentation, but try to get it in one place so you don't forget about it later on. During build season, so we talked about proofreading, really important for extra set of eyes and different eyes to be looking at this stuff. So parents, English teachers, anybody that is willing to help, take them up on that offer.
And
Good.
onto like presenters and stuff like that. You will need a lot of practice for the presentation because you will need to make it sound more natural and not less robotic, especially if the students aren't really used to talking. I know for a fact that I would never be up here talking to people that never started their chairmans, because in middle school I completely freak out and I have to talk to people.
It's a really good growing experience. So developing a plan for presentation, it's not just for chairmans. Think of it with your Dean's List students too. You want to have it's really, I think, for students, as much as they love themselves and love taking Snapchats of themselves, talking about their achievements to adults is a really weird thing for them.
They're fucking too.
Yeah. So being able to sit down and come up with a list of questions or conversation points based around your essay submission for them will be really important and really beneficial for them. Same thing with chairmans. 31-32 Thunder Down Under, who won the championship chairmans, we had a call with them and they were saying they do like game night with their team on Fridays where the chairman's team would create like a Jeopardy layout, like questions and answers, and they'd break up, mechanical team, electrical programming, and they'd turn it into a game night. Who knows the most information about the team? Just to familiarize everybody with the information that's being shared in these presentations.
Since it's just not just non-tech will be answered questions by judges and all that stuff, it's important for your whole team to know about your team's history and questions that have to do with chairmans or non-tech.
Cool. And we'll probably get more into this a little bit later, but for the Chairman's Award presentation, after you submit your submission, you sign up at your first district event to submit for chairmans. You get 7 minutes to present and then 5 minutes of question and answer with the judges. Your presentation can involve like 6 5-inch binders full of support material. It could just be a single handout. It could be a poster or a video. Basically anything you bring into that room, you want to make sure that it's really helping support the story that you're trying to tell to the judges.
Including in the presentation, just be sure that you practice that, as I said, especially since some judges will time you right when you walk into the door.
Yep.
So timing and managing that time is really important.
Yep. All right, so competition season, that is when you're running around each weekend to competitions. So Dean's List, it's really important, like I said, to make sure that they're reading over their essay so they understand the talking points that they may be kind of confronted with. Have teammates or other people ask them sample questions, and same thing for chairman. So make sure you practice. Gabby, you want to talk more about the chairman's prep for competition season?
So basically you double check everything, like make sure your essay is really good before you send it, like for grammar mistakes or just word mistakes in general. Practicing your presentation as much as you can before the competition starts. And just getting everyone in, like who is doing presentations, to be ready for it, like get them like loose and not so stressed out about presenting in front of someone, because then if you're just like are so stressed out and you're talking in front of you, you're just gonna stay there frozen. And just reaching out to other teams and asking questions, like if you can help out with the essay, or like make sure to double check on the essay, or just send it out to your team in general, because I know we send out our essay right before we submit it to the whole team on Slack, and announcements to make sure that everything's according to plan. And yeah.
Another thing that I think is helpful, if you can remember the questions that you were asked in your interview, whether it's for Dean's List or for chairman's, make sure you write them down. We typically share them with other teams that ask for them. That way we can kind of compile a list of questions that we know any first judges are going to be potentially asking at another event if we don't win it at the one that we're at. So we're lucky enough now where you get to submit chairman's until you win or until your season's over. Before it was a one and done kind of thing. You'd show up to an event, you'd submit at that one event, and then that was it for the whole season. Your all your work was kind of done. So the fact that you get to present more than once is really nice. It allows you to kind of revise things that may not have gone so well, or that you can improve upon, and it'll allow you to kind of prepare better for the next one.
I would also suggest that when you get to the competition to go and sign up for a specific slot if you want to be in a specific slot, because I know people will rush over there to go get there, so they know what slot that they want. So, just a reminder.
Any questions or comments on this stuff so far? Yeah.
Slightly off point. Is it only the students allowed in the chairman's presentation, or can other teammates go and watch?
So one adult can go in and watch. I've gone in before and we just kind of take notes on what the judges are saying or what types of responses the students have, because I'm sure you would agree with this. Once you step out of the room, you don't even remember what happened because it's just like pure adrenaline. Pretty much. Yeah.
The 3 students are the only ones that can go in the room and they're going to tell. You can't have the whole team.
No.
Okay.
Just one adult with the 3 students. All right, so this is a document that is online. It's by somebody named Amanda Morrison, who's an alumni of a team in Indiana. She works for Bex now, but she always offers on Chief Delphi to review any Woody Flowers Award submission that wants to be reviewed. This is a really great outline for your Woody Flowers Award submission. So first, you want to research your nominee. Ask your teammates, ask their family members, their friends, ask alumni. That's a really good thing to do, is get a hold of alumni and talk to them. Say, what was your experience like with this mentor? Do you have any really good key quotes or facts or fun stories about them that you can share with us? But this is a really good outline to at least start accumulating information and then tying it all together into an essay. Pretty straightforward.
Reminder, don't try to submit it right on deadline, because then your computer will crash.
Yeah.
Because everyone's trying to submit at the same time. So try not to do it right on the deadline, because you'll have a little bit of problems.
All right, so these are just some basic tips for the Chairman's Award. We talked about the executive summary before. That is really the greatest outline in itself. So the executive summary are those short answer questions about specific things that the judges want to know about. Consider it your checklist. The things that are in the executive summary need to be in your essay in some way, shape, or form, and in your presentation perhaps too. Really understand the team support definitions. Who here knows what this is? This was new 2 years ago. Nobody? Yes? Yeah.
Is that how many teams you mentor?
So I'm going to click on this link.
Yeah.
Let's hope this link still works. Yes. All right. So these are really specific. So with the Chairman's Award, you have teams that will claim, we started 10 teams in our area, we mentor all these teams, kind of taking ownership and credit where sometimes it may not be true. So in order to make sure that people are being truthful, first put out this document that explains what is mentoring. So make sure that you're using the terms correctly. Some of them are really similar to each other. For example, running versus hosting an event. So it says here, running an event essentially means that this event would not be possible without the efforts and actions of the given team, where hosting an event occurs when a team opens one of their own facilities or arranges a facility to allow for an event to occur. Very specific, but you want to make sure that you're using it in the correct way, because a judge might look at that and say, well, did they host it? Did they run it? So make sure you look at this document. It's good to kind of create a list of these different definitions and then add your own facts underneath, so you know which things you should be saying, are when you ran an event, or when you hosted an event, or when you mentored a team, or when you founded a team. It gets really confusing, but if you plan it all out ahead of time, it makes it easier. Yeah. Any questions about this? This document's very boring, but it is very important, so make sure you read it. All right. Read other team submissions. Oops, sorry. And that link is here. I love this link so much because it gives you literally every regional and district event that a team won at. It gives you all of their award submissions. So you just click on a link. Here we go. There's the Robockets' entire award submission from last year. You can read it. And their video, I believe, would be right next to it. Yep. So you can go through and read all of those. It's right on the first website, and it's also on this slide, which is on our team page, because I know it's hard to find them. My biggest thing, submit before noon. That's how you create your own deadlines, to make sure that your award submission actually gets put through. There's nothing sadder than showing up to an event and realizing, oh, my team's chairman's award submission did not go through, therefore I don't get to submit for chairman's this year. So make sure you submit. Also, something that we figured out, if you are using Google Docs to write your essay submission, and you go to copy and paste your Google, 999,000 character essay, it will be over in the STEM's website. So make sure you take it and put it in either Notepad or Word, then transfer it. We typically keep the most up-to-date copy in the STEM's award submission, so in case anything were to ever happen, we at least have something in there that we know is up to date to some extent. Yeah, character count is easily one of the worst parts. Yeah.
This is student submitted, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Same with Woody Flowers Award or Dean's List as well. You want to really check the character count.
No, I mean, it's submitted by students, right?
Yes. Yep. So Chairman's Award, Entrepreneurship, and Woody Flowers Award. You as lead mentors will designate 2 students, I believe, to get access to submit those awards. And then I believe you as the lead mentor, you and then the second lead mentor will get access to submit your Dean's List students. So these are some presentation tips for chairmans. Gabby, if you want to take this entire slide.
So writing a script. I know, writing a script is just basically to have an outline, not to say word for word, because then it won't really sound natural. So I know last year we made a full script out, and maybe we'd read over the line, but then we'd turn off the screen and then try to remember the key points of it, just so when we're presenting, we don't read off of something or just have a monotone kind of voice. And having handouts for judges, especially since it would be a unique thing for your team to have a handout, especially if the handouts really nicely designed. It looks kind of cute or cool. And yeah, like I said, practice is perfect. Just if you can, practice a lot. And especially if I know I was kind of new to presenting, so it was really helpful getting all that practice and getting comfortable talking in front of people, especially maybe talking to people on your team you don't specifically talk to. And did we present in front of the team last year? No.
I don't think so. Yeah, it's always good to do.
And again, the definition sheets.
Yeah.
So we just came from First Lego, where they encourage you to do entertaining and a skit and lots of. Is this more straightforward business approach?
Yeah. So it's really dependent on what you want to do as a team. There are teams that go in dressed up head to toe with a theme and do an act. My mom was a chairman's award judge, and she said somebody did their entire chairman's pitch in the theme of Hamilton, so they sang the entire thing, which is pure dedication. But I don't know. She was just absolutely in shock though. But it's completely up to your team. So we had a theme last year, and but it didn't involve any singing, dancing, or acting. It just involved kind of more metaphors and visuals. So it's really whatever works best for your team. The best way to kind of convey the information.
You want to leave a positive memory in the minds of the judges, so that when they go over them and decide who wins the award, they will remember you.
Right. Yes.
Is it important that all 3 students speak, or can there be a lead student and more like 2 support people?
Yeah, so that's something that we've tried to figure out over the years. How do you divide up the information in a way that will show that all 3 of the students that are representing the team are capable and confident with the information that they're presenting? So you want to make sure that the students that are going in feel the most comfortable with maybe a certain chunk of the information. So for example, Gabby talked a lot about outreach within the communities. Our other presenter, Lydia, was really more about team history and numbers, and then Justin was really about tying those 2 things together. So they each had kind of things in their head that if there was a specific question, they would all know to turn all right, that's going to be an answer for Gabby. But they all also figured out how to add their own personal spin onto it. So the way that we did our presentation breakup last year was we kind of put the information into different columns, and the students on their own decided which information do I want to go over. So they highlighted it. And then we took that information and tried to kind of write a script and make sure that it was evened out. At one point, Gabby had about 3/4 of the presentation. She was like, I know all this stuff, I'll go over all of it. So we wanted to make sure that it was evenly divided up. But you want to make sure that all 3 students are talking. And it isn't just 1 or 2 people. Any chairman's questions before we move on?
It also is flu season. You could lose one of your key presenters.
Oh, yeah.
Have some depth in the team.
All right, so entrepreneurship tips. Entrepreneurship is almost as involved as the chairman's award. It just doesn't involve a time slot interview. Judges will be coming around to your pits to ask about your business plan. They'll print out a copy online, but if you have a more beautiful version of it that has graphs, charts, photos, anything that's a little more comprehensive than just the STIMS printout, which, as you saw when I pulled up the Robockets example, that's what the judges see. It's just this wall of text. So if you have something that's definitely more digestible and specific to your team, make sure they get that, because they'll take that back to the judging room and they'll be looking at that more than they'll be looking at the STIMS printout. So it's good to start with the executive summary questions, using it as your guide. I'm going to click on this link. A lot of if you submit for chairmans, a lot of the information from chairmans is also transferable into your entrepreneurship board. That's not the link that used to be there. All right, we'll go back to this. So making an award outline is really helpful. And again, making sure you talk about the objectives, the structure, the sustainability plan that makes your team your team. Whether it's feeder programs within your own community, whether it's outreach stuff that you do, you want to make sure that you're telling your story and backing it up with data and numbers. Another thing that is good to talk about, which not many people want to talk about, are failures to judges. Talk about maybe an obstacle that your team has kind of had to overcome, how you've worked together to get past it or created a plan to get past it at some point. They want to hear about really what's going on with your team and how you're creating fail states in order to prevent anything really bad from happening. Like I said before, make sure you have a hard copy of it, because they will ask, do you have your business plan? Can we have a copy of it? I judged at an event and I got thrown onto entrepreneurship last minute, and they only had like a digital copy of the award submission, so I wasn't able to like write on it or anything, but having the teams that handed me the actual submission was really helpful. Anybody have any comments, questions about entrepreneurship? Any tips from you back there? You survived it, you lived it.
Try to think about all the things you've done related to community outreach, all the fundraisers you do. They really try to look forward to how much work you've done with the community, as well as how much you've worked with the community of itself. And they just want to see that you keep yourself stable throughout the week.
Awesome. All right. So our Dean's List winner from 2015, Camilo, these were tips from him. He went through the interview process at the district level, at the district chance level, and then at the championship level. So he saw the whole spread. So make a plan when you go into the interview. Maybe think about things that may not be in your submission necessarily that you want them to know about you. Practice, but don't memorize. So that's where just having general conversations about talking points can really help, because it helps make it more natural rather than just like robotic. Be confident. Take your time talking. Make sure they understand what you're trying to convey to them. Ask them questions. The judges are usually pretty interesting people. And sleep, even though we know Camilo especially did not sleep because he was always really busy. But making sure that you feel good going into the interview, even if it means like taking a lap outside, getting some fresh air and calming down. But that's your time to really focus on yourself and give your best pitch to the judges. Has anybody here ever done a Dean's List interview? No? Oh. Cool. Any questions about Dean's List stuff? No? Okay. The judge that we'll have at the chairman's chat later on has also been a Dean's List judge. So if you have questions about Dean's List, it would be good to go to that and ask him about it. All right, so these were some of the difficult questions that Camilo received throughout his many interviews. His favorite questions. So these are some things that apparently students get stuck on during that interview because they're so focused on like remembering all the really hard facts, but really try to figure out something that you can, I don't know, just naturally talk about. Like, what do you do for fun? What are you doing this summer? These are other questions that New England First judges have asked. Where do you expect to see yourself in, 3 or 4 years when you're in college, hopefully? What do you want to go to school for and why? Have you applied for any scholarships? And if you say no, typically they'll ask why, which I would ask that too. It's free money. What's your role on the team and how do you inspire others to be leaders? This is a big question that often gets asked in any first judging, whether it's for Dean's List or for Chairman's. It's a pretty good one to think about. All right, any questions before we move on? We haven't even hopped into the technical awards yet. Oh man. Okay, we're gonna start boogieing through some of this. This entire presentation is online. So, technical awards, industrial design. You're really gonna be looking at form and function of your machine. Quality award, talking about robustness. So, does it break? Is it working? Is it consistent? This is where the match observers really come in and bring their data and information from watching the matches and bring it to the table.
Creativity and design, use competitive strategy of play is up one of the awards. And excellence in engineering, how long it took to build the machine, how'd you do for the machine, and the judge award. That is a unique award that every judge makes depending on something.
You never know what it's going to be. And the Innovation and Control Award is specifically about programming in your control system. All right, so for prep, just like anything else that you do during the pre and post season, you really want to look at what went well, what didn't go well. And that's looking at not just the robot, but how you talked about the robot, how you gave information about the robot. During the build season, it's really important to document everything you're doing. From day one of build season, where you look at the game and you start making lists of things that you want your robot to do. Make sure you're documenting all the whiteboards, all the napkins you're writing on, so that way you can take that information and either make your own handout with it or show it to the judges directly. CAD files, engineering journals, and even demonstration pieces. So we had a bunch of failed prototypes last year that we kept on hand because it was basically a component of our robot, but it was something that even if the robot wasn't in the pit, we could hand it to the judge and say, this is our feeder hook, this is how it works. And it was a way for them to kind of look at how it was made and physically kind of play around with it. And sometimes it wasn't really safe to shoot balls in the pit, so that was a good way to kind of show how it worked. To prepare for your technical award, so I know a lot of people were talking about, I want to figure out a way to be eligible for one of these awards. So this is what you want to be doing. You want to identify what's unique about your team. So for us last year, it was our shooter. So we knew that that was kind of our selling point to the judges. They're going to ask, tell me about your robot. This is your opportunity to say, well, our robot's really awesome because, we've got a great shooting robot, or we've got a really fast gear delivery robot. You want to figure out what's unique about your robot and what's unique about your strategy, whether it was your build strategy or your strategy on the field. You want to make sure that those are good talking points. Any adjustments or modifications? So you can change your robot throughout the season. Again, this is a good place to talk about failures and how you overcome them. So for us, it was the ball jamming stuff. So how did we overcome it? We just kept doing different iterations, all that stuff. Oh, this one. This is great. So one thing that we like to do is create a kind of resume about our robot and about our team. So with the robot, it's kind of like the head, shoulders, knees, and toes of your robot. What's your drive system? How many motors does it have? What types of wheels are there? For programming, what language do you use? For your electrical system, how is it laid out? And then talking about the different subsystems. So for last year, it would be maybe your gear intake and your loader, your climber, your shooter. So different categories of your robot and little facts about them. So that way, if, I don't know, a chairman's presenter is in the pit, when a technical judge comes around, they at least can talk about the basics. Yeah.
Is this something you would have written to give to the judge, or is this stuff kids need to
It could
know
be.
off the top of their head?
Either or. I always think it's great to have a copy in the pit for anybody to read off of. The judges do not expect every student to know every single thing about everything. So having a handout for either your own reference is great, but having one that the judges can take back to the pit with them is even better. That way they can kind of use it to state their case when, another judge is like, but this robot's better. You'll have something that you've given to them that that they're gonna kind of bring to the table for you. So yeah, again, telling your robot story, being able to talk to the judges about your strategic design process really gives a good overview about how your team as a whole is structured and how you're thinking as a team, how you're developing ideas. So you really want to make sure that you talk about that as a starting point. Don't just hop right into like, we have 6 wheels. Talk about, well, when the game was released, this was our thought process. Turning a doodle into a real thing, so showing the whiteboard drawings, the napkin drawings, and then kind of showing how it progressed throughout the season to the beautiful, expensive hunk of metal in your pit now. Like I said before, having tangible items that they can hold and play with is really effective. And it's also good for students because they can kind of fidget with it when they're talking with the judges.
Yes. Is this an actual presentation, or is this when you're
More of-
approaching the pits?
It's when you're approaching the pit, so it's more of a casual conversation. Usually they'll stick around for about five minutes, maybe. If it's longer than that, that's a really good thing. And if they keep coming back throughout the event, that's a really good thing.
Prototypes are especially good for demos and stuff. I know, especially if we have new students and stuff, they can look at this thing and then explain it out to people who have approached them to get more sponsors or just get more people involved in stuff.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna keep rushing a little bit because we have about 5 minutes left. So team attribute awards. These are our rookie awards. These are the types of things they're gonna be looking for. So these are all pit interview awards. There are no presentations until district champs, right? Rookie All-Star, do they do a presentation at district champs? I don't know.
No, I
No,
think
it's
so.
pit interview, right?
Yeah. I think they're-
Yeah.
Yeah, they can do a presentation, but it's not necessary.
Okay, good to know. All right, so team spirit. I remember somebody asking me about this. This is the actual definition from FIRST of what team spirit is. Through exceptional partnership and teamwork, furthering the objectives of FIRST within your community. So those are the types of things that they are supposed to be looking for this Team Spirit Award. That will obviously kind of translate into your team being happy and excited at the event.
Versus professionalism, get relationships with other teams, and just demonstrating versus professionalism.
Teams will vote on, or like fill out a piece of paper that go to the judges saying like which team at the event they think deserves this award. Engineering Inspiration is a very big award. It will qualify your team for the district championships. It shows advancing respect and appreciation for engineering, so really the technical side of things within your school and community. And the way that you're going to be doing those things is through seminars, maybe starting FLL teams, FTC, doing demonstrations. Maybe it's like, I don't know, STEM in a box that you give to some of your schools. So it could be in a variety of different ways. Safety Award is a separate panel of judges. You will see them walking around, usually in like navy, no, green, hunter green, that's the word I was looking for. For their, they're gonna be walking around throughout the day. They do a safety star of the day where they choose one student that's being extra awesome. Each team gets to designate a safety captain. They wear a button in the pit. They're typically the person that's gonna be talking to the safety judges. And then, oh, there's gracious professionalism twice.
Yeah.
Whoops, sorry. And then the judges award could be non-tech. So it could be team attribute. I did not realize I had that in there twice. Whoops. Oh, imagery. Yep. That should be on there. So imagery is really how you're integrating the visual aesthetics of your team, your robot, into like a cohesive thing. I'm surprised I don't have it on here.
You probably put it.
Do I have it on there? No. No, sorry about that. So imagery is, you know, how your team looks as a whole. How are you integrating a theme or a color or something about your team into your robot, your pit, your cart, your handouts, I don't know, your team name, your robot's name, all that stuff. So prepping for these awards is very similar to everything else that we've talked about before. Having group discussions about what went well, what didn't go well, what other people saw from other teams. Like walking around at events, you're going to see really cool ideas that you hadn't thought of yet for how to display, I don't know, your CAD work or, you know, your outreach and stuff. So take notes, steal from the best, invent the rest when it comes to things like that. Collecting information again, turning data into more of a story about yourself. Got 1 minute left. Build season, so same thing. You get to update and edit a lot of your things throughout each event. If you see something really cool at one event that you want to try to integrate into your own team, you definitely have time to do that. Creating visuals and support materials. This is huge, especially for the robot. The robot is out on the field 12 times throughout an event, at least. So the chances of the judges coming in when your robot's not there is pretty likely. So make sure that you have something visual that they can at least check out, and hopefully they'll come back and actually look at your robot. get everyone caught up on everything. So back to the idea of having like a little cheat sheet or resume, that's a good way to start. Otherwise, sharing award submissions, having conversations, all that type of stuff. Interview tips. So when you are talking to the judges in the pits, it's really good to just have an idea of what you want them to leave with. Whether it's a technical thing or a non-technical thing. Before you go to the event, maybe discuss as a team, like, what are the most important facts and like things that set us apart that we want the judges to take back into the judging room with them. Making sure you hit different talking points for them to get that. It's a good idea to practice. There's a lot of different resources online that have different judging questions. A good way to practice is when it's bag day, if you have like parents and teachers come in, have them ask questions about your robot. You can also set up like mock judge interviews at your lab space. Have the robot there, have like different random groups of kids set up, and go down the line and maybe ask them questions. All right. All right, so this is my last slide. So look back on last season. If you're new this season, you guys have obviously started with FLL, so that's a really good starting point. You have a pretty good grasp on a lot of the judging stuff. But what were the most impactful things you had done as a team, technical and non-technical? How can you improve upon them? Think about simple baby steps on how to make it better, how to grow it. This is a really big thing you want to look at. What have other teams done in your community or anywhere that you really like? And how can you kind of twist that around into working for your team personally? This is a big one that we review with chairmen.
Making them into categories like what do you think went good, what went bad, and what is confusing about everything, the process. And what you're most proud of, and
oh, and cherish what it's like to actually have a normal functioning life before robotic season starts up again.
You never have one.
15, come on.
I cooked dinner twice this week. I consider that excuse. So these are some resources that we use that are really, really helpful. Dana brought up 1511 in one of our last submissions. This is a huge one. So on the FRC website, which I understand is like a black hole to navigate, but there is some really good information on there. So examples of regional and district championship winning submissions for chairmen. They also have other award resources on there as well. Team 234 out of Indiana has a huge collection of entrepreneurship and chairman's examples. They're sponsored by Rolls-Royce, so they have Rolls-Royce engineers go in and really build them on their technical documents and their business plan. So these are some really high-level examples. In the FRC toolkit, different teams have submitted step-by-step how-tos on how to submit for entrepreneurship. I hope this slide still works. Yes. So this is really great. Really, really great. What else? Oops. General awards information is great. And the breakdown of awards, this will be updated for this year, but gives the description, talks about who it's selected by, where you can win it, and where it'll get you. This presentation is on the FRC website, I believe. It's also on Chief Delphi, but we will have it on the Neutrons website. Any questions before we move into the outreach seminar, and you guys can escape to your other ones? No.
One comment. Please don't try to do everything.
And if you want to do everything, will help, but there's no point in not trying everything. You're paying a lot of money to be in this program. You may as well do everything.
In many cases, try to do a few things very well.
And a lot of the information that you create for one award is totally transferable into another. And one thing that I forgot to mention, if you submit for entrepreneurship or chairman's, all that information is so easily plugged into grant applications. I cannot tell you how many times we've been able to submit for a grant in less than 24 hours because we basically copy and paste and reword different segments of our chairman's award. It is so transferable and so useful. It's pretty great. So it is a lot of work, but it really will pay off one way or another. Even if you don't win the award, it's going to be useful in other places. So cool. Thanks, guys.